What's going on, everyone? You are listening to episode 51 of the Sports On broadcast. I am Tyler Edgerton, and my co host this week would be one Joe Fabiani back for the football season. What's going on, Joe?
What's going on, man? Glad to be here.
Absolutely. We got Eagles on top this Sunday. We had some real live football that actually counted yesterday, and we are ready to get back into the swing of things. But first, we have some breaking news, and that would be that Ezekiel Elliott is granted by the judge to play this season while his case is settled, meaning he does not have to serve the 6 week suspension. What are your thoughts on that?
Um, it's these. We saw what happened with Deflategate, and how these cases get tied up in the courts, and then you see what happens. There was a lot of talk that this will get pushed until next year, and it kind of seems like obviously that's what's playing out. Um, I feel like it was something that was kind of rushed, or like they built this case and then rushed to get the judgment in. And obviously they're paying for it right now.
Yeah, I agree. It's certainly a benefit to the Cowboys, and we'll get into the schedules a little later, but I mean, getting him back is just a huge deal for them. I mean, they start off the season and they're ready to go, whereas they would have had someone filling in, and then maybe they build a little bit more chemistry, or it takes them some time in week 7, week 8 when he comes back to build that chemistry. But right off the bat, having Elliott, I know a lot of fantasy owners are happy about that, but I know Eagles fans aren't, Giants fans aren't, Redskins aren't, but the ruling goes down that he will start the season and most likely play for the entire season. Let's jump into the Eagles because that's where we focus, and we're going to start off with the roster thoughts. They cut down to 53 about a week ago. Was there any surprises or disappointments for you going down the 53-man roster?
Surprises. I would say I'm surprised that that Pumphrey and Shelton Gibson made the team. Um, I feel like they kept Pumphrey because they didn't want to admit they made a mistake. From what we can understand is they're going to make him a project player and kind of, build him up and get his strength up. But I was very surprised to see Shelton Gibson stay around.
Yeah,
And as far as disappointments, I really don't have any. I don't really like to fall in love with those last guys that could kind of make the team. And I feel like at this point there's not a huge amount of guys that like you could say that the fan base is more behind than others that like want to stick around. There might be like maybe a handful of guys, but other than that, I mean, really no disappointments on that.
yeah, same for me. Donnell Pumphrey, I don't know if it's just a mistake or that they didn't want someone else to claim him. So to carry 5 running backs is kind of strange for an NFL team, but looks like he is going to be in some way, shape, or form used in this offense along with Darren Sproles, who's kind of the guy they're hoping he develops into. Shelton Gibson, kind of along the same lines you mentioned. I was surprised they didn't keep Rice Treggs. He's been around for a year longer. Gibson had the drops in training camp, and I thought Bryce Treggs, when he was in preseason, he looked pretty good. So those were the two surprises, or surprise and disappointment for me. I wouldn't say I'm disappointed that Shelton Gibson made the team, but he's certain him and Pumphrey are certainly a project, like you said.
Yeah, and I guess that's really just a case of them not wanting to give up on guys they drafted this year. Although they did cut their fifth-round pick, the linebacker or the safety converted linebacker in Jerry. But I do understand that he is on the practice squad.
Correct.
But ultimately that's a kid that you draft in the fifth round and doesn't make your team. It's a bit concerning. I mean, I know there's more guys that are upset about the way their draft is. I feel like recently, like since they put the final roster out, there's a lot of questions about the draft class, which I feel like that's too early to make that just distinction that this isn't a good draft class, and there's a lot of stuff, at least on Twitter and listening to different radio shows. You hear guys call in and they're concerned about even Derek Barnett's size. I heard one call today on 97.5, the guy was complaining about Derek Barnett being undersized and not being able to play the run when we don't really know that yet. I mean, that's his knock, but we don't know that. We haven't seen that in live action in a regular season game. But, I'll take the growing pains and the sacks that obviously that kid's going to get.
Yeah, I mean, as far as
there's a lot of overreaction as far as, the final roster with the draft class.
As far as a retort to that, I would say look at Brandon Graham. He developed into a very good player, and he's undersized for his position. I mean, as long as you can have someone who can bend the edge, and we've talked about this a lot, where we don't necessarily want Derek Barnett starting to start the season. Kind of let him grow and develop, so that way in a 16-game stretch, he's ready for the long run when they're going to come up against two division rivals, Oakland, things like that. So I mean, he doesn't necessarily have to start the season. You can plug in Vinny Curry and Chris Long for right now and be okay until he learns, a little better how to stay home on the run. And of course, his specialty is getting after the quarterback.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
All right, guys. Well, we introduced this last week, and we want to finish up part 2 of the best players in Philly sports history by the jersey number. Before I do that, you guys can get in contact with us by joining our Facebook live feed or our Periscope feed that goes directly to Twitter. We'd love to hear from you. You can also text our line at 267-404-MYSE. As far as the top players in Philly go by the jersey number, last week we did 1 through 25. That would be Richie Ashburn, number 1, Moses Malone, number 2, Allen Iverson, Barry Ashby, Donovan McNabb, Julius Erving, Ron Jaworski, Mark Recchi, Andre Iguodala, Darren Dalton, number 10, Jimmy Rollins, Randall Cunningham, Wilt Chamberlain, Jim Bunning, Steve Van Buren, Bobby Clark, Harold Carmichael, Mike Richards, Greg Lazinski, number 19, number 20, Mike Schmidt, Eric Allen, Andrew Toney, Troy Vincent, Bombi Jones, and Jim Thome. So now we start off with number 26 through 30, all the way up to 50, but we're going to break it up as we did last episode. So number 26, we're going to start off and discuss one Chase Utley, you are the man. Number 27, we have Ron Hextall. Number 28, nothing better than Claude Giroux, who has led this team for a couple years. Number 29, we have John Kruk. And number 30, that one was a tough one to think of, but we went with Eagle Brian Mitchell, who was a good returner for the Eagles back in the day.
Can I just comment on one of those numbers?
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't actually get a chance to check it last week. I can't believe you picked Mike Schmidt's number 20 over Brian Dawkins' number 20.
Well, we had honorable mentions.
Worth of debate.
We had honorable mentions.
Oh man!
And Elijah and I did.
It's definitely up for a great sports debate.
Yeah, I mean,
we
said number 20 was. We said number 20 was well represented, but the thing is, when we looked at it, Mike Schmidt's in the Hall of Fame right now and the home run leader record-wise for the Phillies franchise, and then Brian Dawkins, great in his own right, but just hasn't had the accolades that Mike Schmidt has had over the year. But it definitely was a good debate, and number 20 is represented very well.
All right. We should make a show of that.
We definitely could. We'll definitely visit this this list once again, maybe on the bye week. But guys, now it is time to jump into the NFC East records. We have broken down each team and their record. We're going to go down starting with in reverse order of the standings last year. So we're going to start with the Dallas Cowboys. Now, in case you guys haven't heard, like we just said, Ezekiel Elliott does get the exemption from the judge in the District Court of Texas, and that means he will be playing the entire season. Doesn't have to serve the 6-game suspension. So let's see how this affects their season going forward. Joe, let's just go right down the record for the Cowboys, or right down the schedule, and we'll start with the Sunday night starter against the Giants at home.
I do like Dallas in this game. I just threw up in my mouth. Yeah, I do like Dallas in this game, though. I think Zeke's going to play with a huge edge. I think he's really going to want to get out there and show, the type of player he is and show that he can fight through the adversity that he's going through. We talked about this before. I hate that, when we were in the draft process 2 years ago, we were raving about Zeke, and now we have to absolutely, go against him. It's crazy, but, his situation, you can't make, any excuses or try to, back this guy up. It's crazy the way that it worked out. Now he's going to be able to play the full season. But I mean, he's a key to their offense. If not the most important key. I know people want to talk about Dak Prescott potentially being an MVP candidate, which is a bit absurd in my opinion. I think you can make that case for Zeke when you really look at what their offense did last year. But when you really look at it, I think that's really going to spark their team, and it's really going to get them going on offense. Plus, I do believe that Beckham's not going to suit up Sunday. Is that been confirmed?
It's a 50-50 chance is what I saw last, but
yeah, the last time I saw, I think I read yesterday, he might miss the first 2 games, but I wasn't sure if they determined his status yet. If he's not good to go, I think that it's even more of in the favor of the Cowboys. Obviously, they're going to try to do what they do and run the ball and keep the ball away from opposing offense. But I mean, for me, I think that the Giants have a lot of new pieces on offense, and their offensive line. There's huge question marks on that line, and if they're missing their best playmaker on offense, I think it's going to be tough for them to get going. So I would say they're basically limping in more or less to the game. So I think it's really in the Cowboys' favor.
One thing on the Giants side, Eli Manning has played very well against the Cowboys. I'm going to start the Cowboys off with a loss. Now I know, it certainly is up for debate whether this is going to be and having Zeke back is definitely going to be in the Cowboys' favor. I just feel like the Giants' defense is so much better than the Cowboys, and the Cowboys' defense is very young, trying to grow together. I think Eli Manning, even without OBJ, will go to Brandon Marshall and kind of pick apart those corners of the Cowboys. So you have them starting off with a win. I have them starting with a loss. Let's kind of go in fours here and go quarter of the season. So we have Giants, Broncos, Cardinals, Rams. What's your record for them?
Giants, Broncos, Cardinals, Rams. Wow. Man, there's definitely 3 tough games in there. Do you have yours already?
Yeah, I do. So I'll go down and maybe you can just comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so I have a loss against the Giants at home, a win at the Broncos, a win at the Cardinals, and a win at the Rams. They start off 3-1. Agree or disagree?
I would disagree. I really like the Cardinals coming back this year. I know they haven't really been talked about, around, I guess, fan circles, you could say, because they kind of fell off with a lot of injuries last year. But looking at these games, I think it's very realistic to think that they could go 2-2 in the first 4. And saying that, obviously, I would win against the Giants, a win against the Broncos, and a loss against the Cardinals. I'm sorry, got it mixed up. A win against the Giants. I'm sorry, and a win against the Broncos, and a loss to the Cardinals and the Rams.
You think they'll lose to the Rams? Very interesting.
Yeah. For some reason, I just think they're sleeping on them. I really like their defense. Not a lot of people talk about their defense. And I really think that they're stout up front, and I think that's going to kind of hamper their ability to run the football. So I think that could present problems. But yeah, I mean, I actually like the Rams to be better than most people think this year. Not that they'll compete for a playoff spot, but I think they're going to be very competitive like they were a few seasons ago.
Makes sense. All right, let's run through the rest of the schedule. We have the Packers before the bye week. I have that as a loss. They are coming out of the bye. They are at the 49ers, at the Redskins, the Chiefs, the Falcons, the Eagles. I have 2 losses in that, and I have the Falcons and the Eagles as the loss.
Jeez, what was it, like 6 games you just ran over?
Do you not have the schedule in front of you?
I don't know.
Oh, man. All right. Well, let's just go this way. How about we look at the division as a whole, and you tell me who would be your favorite for the win, and what records would you give each team?
I hate when you do that to me. That's funny. I don't know. I mean, I still have so many questions about every team in our division.
That's fair.
Um, when you look at it, I just feel like it really could be one of those years where the Giants take a step back and they go 7-9, 8-8. The Cowboys now. I originally didn't think they were going to have a good year. Without Zeke for 6 games. If I'm being honest about it, I really thought that team was going to struggle to find their identity and kind of lose what they're good at in the early part of the season and kind of have to find themselves at the end of the year. The Redskins, they're completely different on offense besides Jordan Reed and Rob Kelly. And, I know people like the Giants defense and they played very well last year. But, I just think they have so many questions on offense, especially their running game and offensive line like we talked about. Their receivers, obviously, it's one of the top receiving corps in the league. But,
Well, there's
I think I will say this. I think that this division is I feel like overlooked. In terms of being competitive for whatever reason, I just feel like they're not talked about as one of the best divisions in football. So I think that each team is going to come in competitive, but it's just too much. Too many questions on each team. Even the Eagles, there's a lot of questions.
There's a lot of new faces on the starting 22 of each team.
Right.
When you look at the Redskins, it's on offense with Terrell Pryor, even Josh Doxson. He's a rookie coming in. Same thing with the Eagles, LeGarrette Blount, Alshon Jeffrey, Torrey Smith, and now Nelson Aguilar in the slot is kind of a new thing for the Eagles. You look at the Giants, and they've kind of put together, I guess, not the best roster, but they've done the least amount of overhauling. Really, the biggest pickups for them would be for Brandon Marshall and Evan Ingram. And then Dallas, they have a new defensive line completely and 2 new corners that are very young, and they're going to have to grow. I kind of agree with what you said about Ezekiel Elliott. I thought they would struggle to kind of not find an identity, but they wouldn't have the running game to lean on as much. And then when it came to week 7 or 8, they would finally get him back, but was it too late? They would have to get off to a good start. When I go down, like as far as record-wise, when I look at the Eagles specifically, they're going to have to get off to a good start. You look at the last 4 games, and you have at the Rams, at the Giants, the Raiders, and the Cowboys. But even before that Rams game, they're at the Seahawks. So, I mean, those final 5 games are going to be huge for the Eagles. I think they need to get off to a good stretch. The Redskins, I put underneath the Eagles, and maybe that's not fair because they've won 5 straight games against us, but I just feel like they're going to struggle. Kirk Cousins, he does put up stats, but he really hasn't taken that team anywhere, and I think that's part of the reason why I chastised them 2 years in a row. You look at the GM, that was a mess in the offseason for them. As far as the Giants, I think they bring the most continuity and are the most consistent. However, when you look at them, their offense ranked 23rd last year in yardage and points. So I don't know if you can say that they're necessarily a lock for the division. And then you get the Cowboys back. I think there was 3-4 games. The Vikings come to mind. That game on Thursday night, they easily could have lost, and that's just kind of how the NFL goes. But when I look at the division, I would say it's the Cowboys, Giants, and the Eagles right there, all kind of fighting for the division lead, and then the wild card as well. Because, like you said, this division is overlooked, and I think there's going to be 2 playoff teams that come out of it, like last year with the Giants and Cowboys.
Right. I would say that's a fair assessment. I could see that happening as well with 2 playoff teams. I would also agree that I do think the Redskins are the weakest team in the division this year. And I know they have won 5 straight games against the Eagles, and I get that. But like I said, and like you said, they're completely different. As far as their starting receiving core is going to be completely overhauled. There's some trouble in the back end of their secondary with their young safety and Cravens, who is unsure if he even wants to play football anymore. He's contemplating retirement. They're not really sure what he wants to do, and that's kind of a guy that they had to look to and pencil in as a starter. And I think that's going to help the Eagles on Sunday, because even if this kid's playing, you kind of have to question, is he really giving 100% effort out there? Because he's a young kid, he's confused, not sure what he's doing. Is he really fully committed to playing football?
Well, the thing is with him, he didn't even make the 53, so he's starting off with an injury, and that's kind of why he looked at retirement as a possibility. But he will not be out there Sunday. He's not
That's
on the
is that
53 unless they
that
activate him, but I don't believe that he will be
that
fully healed.
I saw that. I thought he was on the non-football injury list. Is that what I saw? There was some kind of like weird one of those weird spots. But yeah, no, I mean I just think that they have so many questions, more than answers. And I know you could say that about the Eagles as well, but they're when you look at the Eagles, I think that, or even any team really, when you look at the offensive and defensive line, that's kind of where your team starts, and they have questions all around that team. I mean, we'll break down the preview for the game, but yeah, the Redskins are definitely the bottom of the division as far as my opinion goes this year.
Just quickly on Tua Cravens, it looked like he had off-season knee surgery and is still trying to recover from that. I don't know if he got preseason action or not because I do not pay attention to the Redskins preseason. But yeah, that'll be definitely interesting. Like we said, Josh Doxson is also coming back for them. We'll see where this division
Right.
goes. But if you had
It
to
was.
name a division winner right now, who would you take?
Oof. Um, you know,
You seem a little
I
torn up about it.
well, I would love to say that I think the Eagles will win the division, but you know, I think realistically it's going to come down to the Cowboys and the Eagles. That's just how I feel. It's just a gut feeling. I can't really, give you stats on why I feel that way. But when I just look at all the teams in the division, that it's just I just feel like those are the top two teams talent wise as a whole. Um, yeah, I really just there's so many questions. Like I said on the Giants offensive line, they want to talk about those receivers, but if he doesn't have time to throw the ball and you're going against especially the Eagles front, I can't wait for that Giants game. It's going to be fun to watch. I just think that it has to be the Eagles and the Cowboys as far as talent goes.
I'm sort of along the lines with you. I think the Eagles will push for a wild card spot, but I would say that it's either the Cowboys or the Giants again this year. They proved last year that they kind of had an identity, and we've talked about that a lot this offseason. What is the Eagles' identity, and what do they do well? You can certainly look at certain things like turning the ball over. The Eagles were very good in the turnover differential last year. Obviously, their offensive line and defensive line is going to be the strengths. The weaknesses are, possibly running back and the secondary. But I don't know. I just feel like they are not ready to take that step and be a legitimate division winner. So I would say if I'm looking at the Eagles, they're a wild card team.
Right. Nah, I mean, I get you. I just didn't want to say the Cowboys were going to win the division out loud.
I hear you. You don't want pitchforks outside.
Yeah.
All right, so let's jump into my favorite part. We finally get back to predictions for the year. Let's get some NFL music going. All
Ooh,
right, we're going to start off with our AFC and NFC predictions.
some
Joe, I'm going to.
goosebumps from that music right there.
I'm sorry?
Some goosebumps from that music right there.
I know, it's great. So let's jump right into it. Joe, I'm going to ask you your AFC and NFC team you believe that will come out. We do this every year. Most of the time we don't pick who the team is, but it's still fun to do. So let's go with it. Let's start with the AFC, and who is your pick to come out and represent in the Super Bowl?
Uh, it's funny. After game one, my answer definitely changes. After last night, the Patriots are going to battle back. I think they'll be okay because they're the Patriots, and you can't really get down on the Patriots. But I did like what I saw out of the Chiefs last night. I do like the Steelers. I liked them last year. That was my pick last year. The Steelers and the Packers, I believe, were my picks last year. So I failed on both of those. But yeah, I mean, this year, going into this year, I really like the Chiefs, even though they lost Eric Berry, and I really like the Steelers again. But if I had to pick one right now, I'm still going with the Steelers. I really like that offense. And I think they have a really good young linebacking core that could take a nice step forward this year. And they have a secondary who's also young, but I think they have a year. Yeah, they all do. They all have a year starting under their belt. Plus, they just got Joe Hayden, who I think that now that he's finally in a winning program, you're going to see him kind of have a fire lit under him. He's going to play well this year. And obviously, when you have arguably the two best offensive weapons on your team, and Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown, it's kind of hard to pick against the Steelers.
Yeah, it's hard not to go against the Chiefs after they dismantled the Patriots yesterday. I thought that game, it could have been put away early, and the Chiefs showed up, and they kind of handled that game, especially the second half. The way they
Right.
came out and scored 21 points, and they had a great showing from the rookie after he fumbled. You look at the Patriots, and it's kind of funny. You think they need some sort of bulletin board material to get up for games. You give Andy Reid 6 months to prepare for the Super Bowl champion, and look what happens. I mean, they take over. Alex Smith looks like Aaron Rodgers. Hard not to go without the Chiefs as my pick. But that being said, there are 32 other teams, and there's definitely, you know, probably four other teams in the AFC that you could go with. I'm going to stick with Oakland. I think Derek Carr just has the it factor. Breaks his leg last year. Their defense, although suspect in some spots, they really play together for Jack Del Rio. And then I really like the addition of Marshawn Lynch. A lot of people are doubting him off a year, but when I look at him, he just kind of complements the offense in the way that the Raiders are a tough, hard-nosed football team. Now they have the running back to kind of back it up after losing Latavius Murray. So my AFC pick is going to be Oakland. Let's switch over to the NFC and get your pick first, Joe.
It's actually like thinking about the Raiders. That's actually like you can make that argument. There's just so many good teams in the AFC.
Yeah, it's tough, and they all beat up on each other.
Yeah, and it's crazy. Like last year, I feel like week to week we were like, oh wow, did you see this team? And then the next week they completely fall off. You know what I mean? But yeah, no, the Raiders are definitely going to be one of those teams you're going to want to watch this year. There's so many exciting teams this year. Now, turning our attention to the NFC, it's always a battle every year in the NFC, and I know everyone's going to want to pick the Falcons with that offense they have going to get back there, but we know how tough that is, and I think even in that division, I think Carolina's going to battle back and have a rebound year. I really like the weapons they added down there.
I said that last year, and it didn't work out.
Carolina. But yeah, I mean, yeah, and obviously you have New Orleans in that offense, or New Orleans in the division too with that offense. They're trying to retool their defense.
And even Tampa Bay is going to be a threat.
Look at Tampa Bay too. Like, yeah, it's that division is going to be. It could be potentially. They could all have top 15 offenses. It's realistic to say in that division. But I think that's probably my most intriguing division. Like I really want to pay attention to the NFC South this year.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely check that out, guys. But yeah, for NFC, coming back, I know it's funny. I'm going to pick the two same teams I picked last year. But I just love the Packers this year, man. I really do. You look in their backfield, and they have a guy in Ty Montgomery who's playing running back right now, who is a receiver turned running back, and showed tremendous promise as a running back, but then can split out and run wide receiver routes on you. You just look at that offense as a whole. They're all healthy. You got Jordy Nelson, Devontae Adams, Randall Cobb. Adding Martellus Bennett. And their offensive line coming back, and I think that really where they're gonna, you kind of make or break again. Like I spoke to before, is their secondary. They really need their secondary to kind of play together as a unit. I think that's really their only, kind of tink in the armor, as you could say. But I really like the Packers this year.
You look at the Falcons, and I agree with mostly everything you said, except for the fact I feel like the Falcons will not fall off this year. I think they will be the top of the division, and their defense, while young, is just going to get better. When it comes to the NFC, though, I look at Seattle, and they made some great trades. They go out and get the defensive tackle from the Jets, and they just bolster that defense. I think they have one last run in them. While everyone is still young, I think they have one last run in them. Russell Wilson is just a Houdini back there. And although they don't have the greatest wide receivers or, the greatest core for Russell Wilson to work with, they do have Eddie Lacy for short yardage. They have Thomas Rawls, C.J. Prosise, and I even think Jimmy Graham kind of gets back into the offense. We saw a lot of that or a little bit of that at the end of last season. I think he kind of jumps back in and becomes a major red zone threat for them and even stretches the field along with Doug Baldwin. So I look at Seattle and I just think if they're going up against Green Bay, luckily we get to see this in week 1 on Sunday. But if they're
Yeah.
going up against Green Bay, I think Seattle has the offensive firepower to go against Green Bay's defense, whereas Seattle has the defensive firepower to go against Green Bay's offense, if that makes sense, to kind of shut them down. So I'm going to look at Oakland and Seattle in the Super Bowl, and I'm going to ride with Seattle over Oakland. You have Pittsburgh and Green Bay out of the NFC. Who would be your Super Bowl pick?
My Super Bowl pick, you know, it would have to be the Steelers. I just think, you know, with the firepower and the athleticism on both sides of the ball, you know, you have the question marks of Ben Roethlisberger, if he was even going to come back this year. I think that'd be a great story for him. But ultimately, I just think that, you know, this could be a year in the AFC where, you know, maybe, you know, you have some of the guys that you're used to seeing perform so well kind of fall off. And really, you know, we've been waiting for the Steelers the last 2 seasons. I feel like, you know, they're always good, but, you know, you're kind of waiting for them to break through and get to the, you know, the championship games and kind of see where they are. And, you know, I really like their chances this year, especially with Martavis Bryant coming back to complete that offense. And, you know, I think that only really, you know, improves their chances. And, you know, but that'd be a hell of a storyline for Seattle and Oakland to go up against each other with beast mode in the backfield.
Yeah, it would. That would be great. It makes for a good story, like you just said. But getting back Martavius Bryant for Big Ben will definitely be huge as he gets just another year older. I feel like he can still put it together for a season or two, but having, you know, more wide receivers on the outside that are top quality definitely helps him. All right, guys, let's jump back to the top players in Philly sports history by jersey number as we get some of your guys' opinions on who you think will be the AFC and NFC representative. Feel free to comment on our Facebook live feed, on Periscope, or text us at 267-404-MYSE. We want to hear who you think will win the Super Bowl in the 2017 season, but 2018. So let's jump back to our list. We have numbers 30 through 40 coming up, and I'm going to turn it over to Joe, and he's going to go down the list for us.
Number 30, was Brian Mitchell
I'm sorry, 31 through 40.
But yeah, so number 31 would be Wilbert Montgomery. Played for the Eagles. For those of you who aren't big Eagles fans.
If they're not big Eagles fans, they're probably not tuning into this show.
He was the franchise's leading rusher for a number of years until LaShawn McCoy ultimately supplanted him. And then at number 32, we have lefty Steve Carlton. 33, we have Robin Roberts. 34, we have Charles Barkley. 35, we have Hollywood Cole Hamels. 36, obviously, we have Brian Westbrook. 37, we have Eric Desjardins, who played a great number of years for the Flyers as a defenseman. Number 38, although the bloody sock wasn't with the Phillies, I'll never forget how tough of a guy Curt Schilling was. Number 39, Brett Myers. What can you say other than that Milwaukee series? Hell of a series. That was a hell of an at-bat. And then rounding it out at number 40 is Tom Brookshire, who played for the Eagles in the 50s as a defensive back.
It's definitely tougher looking at this list. It's tougher as you get up in the numbers, trying to find someone to fill some of these holes. But, you know, I look at number 31 through 40 on our list here and just certain people that I've either heard about or got to watch. You know, Cole Hamels delivered a World Series for us. Brian Westbrook, my favorite running back, right behind LaShawn McCoy. And then, you know, even someone like Brett Myers or Curt Schilling, I was kind of on the cusp of, saw the end of Schilling's career and just the things that he would do up in Boston. He was a great pitcher. And then even Brett Myers, you know, he was kind of the build-up to Cole Hamels in the 2008 through 2012 run. So they're definitely well representative. And then you even have people like Steve Carlton, who you hear about, and Robin Roberts, who was a Phillies pioneer. So some definitely good names on this. We'll get through 41 through 50 at the end of the show. But right now, let's jump back to the Eagles. and jump right. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's jump into some predictions first, and we're going to make our Week 1 predictions. We have two tough games on the schedule that we've examined a little bit. We'll jump into it a little bit, and we'll start with Joe. So, game 1 we have on the schedule would be the Arizona Cardinals, favored on the road against the Detroit Lions. Joe, who's your pick?
I talked a little bit about them earlier. I'm taking the Cardinals in this game. Like I said, I really like the Cardinals coming back this year. I know there's a lot of questions going around right now, especially because Larry Fitzgerald's another year older, potentially his last season. I know that there's a lot of talk that it will be his last season, but a lot of people thought it would be last year that it was his last season, and he came out and played just like Larry Fitzgerald's always played. I really just like the Cardinals to rebound this season. I think they have a tremendous defense. And obviously, you can make the argument they have the best running back in football, if not the second best running back in football, in David Johnson, a dynamic weapon. And they have some great pass rushers and some great stout guys up front on their defensive line as well. And I think you turn it over and look at Detroit. I think Matthew Stafford, he's getting better every year, and he's kind of turning into a nice veteran quarterback.
Brand new contract.
Who just got paid. But I think when you look at their offense, it's kind of an incomplete offense right now. I do like Golden Tate, but I'm not really quite sure that he is that bona fide number one receiver who's going to scare you on defense if you're going up against that offense. And they're basically running back by committee in the backfield with Riddick and Abdullah. I just think the Cardinals are more rounded out of a team, and I think that's going to play a factor going into this game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I look at Detroit. They even have Marvin Jones on the other side, but when you look at it, the Cardinals can answer that with Tyrann Mathieu as a safety, Deion Buchanan. They have Patrick Peterson to shut down one of them, and then I know they lost Calais Campbell, but the defense, the front defense of the Cardinals is still pretty good. I'm gonna ride with the Cardinals on the road as well. Larry Fitzgerald, like you said, is just all reliable. Carson Palmer, he is older, but he still has the arm to get it done. And to be honest, he didn't play that much football last season. He was injured. So I think you look at this game, and I think the Cardinals will be able to pull it out on the road, especially with what you said, David Johnson being the number one, debatable 2 back in the league. I'm going to ride with the Cardinals as well. Game 2, we go to the Oakland Raiders and the Tennessee Titans. I think this is a great matchup for Week 1, along with some others on the schedule. But you look at this, you have Mariota, kind of the up-and-coming kid, Derek Carr, the up-and-coming kid. Both sustained leg injuries last season. The teams are trying to build around them with picks like Corey Davis or, Amari Cooper on the outside and give them weapons. And then, of course, Marshawn Lynch coming back, DeMarco Murray, Derrick Henry, we know about that. Who would you pick in this game? The Tennessee Titans are favored at home. We have the Oakland Raiders in Week 1 traveling to the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, this is going to be a tremendous game. Both of these teams are going to be teams that you're going to want to watch this season in Oakland and in Tennessee. But just a gut feeling. I like Tennessee in this game, and not just because they're at home. I just think that they're so well rounded out now. I mean, really their biggest question mark in last season was their secondary. And then they had their quarterback go down, and Mariota was really coming into form up until he got hurt last year. I know Derek Carr's looked good too, and Oakland's going to be one of those teams that you're going to want to watch. They're definitely exciting, but I think that Tennessee is going to make a statement in this game, and that they're for real. And I think it's really going to be one of those teams that you're going to have to watch and say, wow, did you see how the Titans played this week?
Yeah, I'm going to go against you. I like everything that you say, but I just feel like it's not going to be the week. And the one thing I look at is the coaching matchup between the Tennessee Titans and the Oakland Raiders. I mean, you have Mike Mularkey, who most people would say is the 32nd worst coach in the league. You have Jack Del Rio on the other side, who didn't start off very well in his head coaching career, but when you look at it, he's really rebounded very well. He's put together a defensive scheme that people can follow. And then the other thing, this would be, I guess, my stat of the week. The Raiders were 9-2 in games decided by 1 score, and were 5-0 in games decided by 3 points or fewer last season. I think it's going to be a very close one and sort of a low-scoring game. I really like the Oakland Raiders to pull one out on the road to start off their season on the heels or on the back of Marshawn Lynch. I'm going to say they win in the range of, 20, 24-20 or 21-17, something like that. I really like the Oakland Raiders going into Tennessee and putting in some work and getting the W.
He's all on the Raiders.
The Raiders. All right, guys, we are now going to jump to the Eagles at the Redskins. It's week 1. The Eagles have a tough road ahead of them, schedule-wise, and they also have a division opponent that they're starting off with, who has beaten them 5 times in a row, as we mentioned before. Joe, I'm just going to toss it to you and get your general thoughts on this game before we go into key injuries and a final prediction.
All right. We talked a little bit about this. I know I haven't been on the last 2 weeks, but I know that we talked a bit through texting, and I was disappointed in how much the offense played as a whole in preseason. And I understand you don't want to get guys injured, and you get what you see certain things in practices because they're scrimmaging against the Dolphins, so you're getting live reps. But for me, in seeing how they did struggle to get going at times, I'm a bit worried about the offense. I feel like we could see them struggle a bit out of the gate. I feel as though Carson Wentz is going to rely a little bit on the guys he knows at first. And I know that I said I was worried about him forcing the issue, Alshon Jeffrey. But I really do think that he's going to look to Zach Ertz a lot in this game to really kind of exploit their safeties. But I mean, as far as the offense as a whole, I feel like it's going to take about maybe 3 to 4 games for this offense to really hit the ground and kind of see where they are. But on the other side, I do love what I saw from limited amounts of the starting defense. I think that they're really going to be able to get the quarterback this season. And adding Jernigan to that defensive line and Derek Barnett and the veteran and Chris Long. And I'm not really expecting a whole bunch out of Vinny Curry. As long as he can play consistent, I'll be okay with that. But you're not going to be able to double team every guy on this defensive line, and all of these guys that are the starters and some of the reserves have the ability to get after the quarterback. So I think this is one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. It's easily top 3 in my opinion. I know that's a lot, and people are gonna be like, wow. But when you really look at how they grade out and you really look at the guys that they have, I really do think it's a top tier unit in the NFL. And that's really what I like. I know that there's a lot of people that are, a bit uneasy about the secondary. And, I think you'd be crazy to say you're not uneasy about how the secondary is going to shake out. I feel like you're going to see a lot of safeties on the field. And the fact that they kept Jalen Watkins and Corey Graham. You're going to have Malcolm Jenkins and then, McLeod. All those guys have the ability to play the slot. So, I feel like you're going to see maybe more safeties on the field at times than standard corners. I think that maybe Patrick Robinson could lose a few reps to either Jenkins coming down or Corey Graham coming in, who has played a little bit of corner as well. But, I really like the line. And, if Jordan Hicks can just stay on the field and be healthy, I think that he's going to be able to control the defense and really get the guys lined up to where they need to be. And I really see a big season out of Jordan Hicks this year. If he's healthy, I think that he's going to be a Pro Bowl caliber linebacker.
Speaking of Jordan Hicks, let's go straight to the injury report. And he's really the only one to worry about now that Nick Foles is back. Jordan Hicks had that scary hand injury on his honeymoon, but he has told some of the Eagles reporters that he feels 100%, which is huge. Getting back to your X factor, which would have been Zach Ertz on the offensive side of the ball, you look back at the last game that they played against Washington, and it was a 27-22 loss, but Zach Ertz had 10 catches for 112 yards. I agree with you that he's going to be the safety net over the middle of the field for the Eagles this season. Now that Jordan Matthews isn't there, that's kind of the only chemistry going into the season that Carson Wentz has with a wide receiver. I know he's a tight end, but you get what I'm saying. He's going to have to build it with Alshon Jeffrey. He's going to have to build it with Torrey Smith. But when I look at this game specifically, I think the Eagles are going to shock everybody and come out with the run. I think they're going to want to get the offensive line going. They're going to want to have the offensive linemen on attack downfield. And they're going to put LeGarrette Blount up the middle through the A-gaps and just let him run wild a little bit until they get down. Now, they will stretch the field, in my opinion. They will throw a couple times deep to Torrey Smith, but I would see a lot of intermediate routes trying to attack Josh Norman specifically and Brashad Breeland. I know they're going to go after the corners, but I would say they start with the running game to kind of set up the play action, which is Carson Wentz's best asset, or at least that's what it looked like in his rookie season. As far as Washington, I think you're right in that the Eagles will get after Kirk Cousins, and Jim Schwartz, who's not known for blitzing, will go after Kirk Cousins. I do think that Terrell Pryor is going to be a problem this Sunday. However, the running game of Washington is not very good, and it's not what they lean on. So I feel like Kirk Cousins will have to air the ball out. I kind of like the Eagles. We talked about Sua Cravens being out for the Redskins. I think that'll help the Eagles as well in the passing game. And then just as far as the Eagles defense goes, I think the reason they'll be able to shut down the rushing game is because they are solid up the middle. You look at Nigel Bradham, Jordan Hicks, and even Michael Kendricks, who had a very good preseason behind the line that gets after the quarterback or rushes, and if the linebackers can fill the gaps along with the safety tandem that we have, the corners will be all right because they will not be exposed with the two safeties over the top. So when I look at this game, I just think the Eagles have the upper hand, and I would not be surprised if they won by a touchdown or so.
Speaking of that, did you have a final score prediction for the game?
I guess if I have to go final score, I would say somewhere around 30-24. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, and yeah, we just talked up both defenses, but I don't know. I feel like both these teams are going to come out firing, and they're just going to push the ball down the field, and it's kind of going to be the opposite. It seems like every time that Washington and the Eagles play, it's a high-scoring game. So I'm going to ride with that, and I'm going to go 30-24 Eagles.
Okay.
How about you?
It's just amazing that none of us touched on Jordan Reed at all.
That's because he's always injured, man. It's hard to forget, hard to remember him.
Yeah, but he's expected to play Sunday, and he's gonna be the X factor for them.
True.
I really would like to see Malcolm Jenkins lined up against him. It just makes me think of last night and watching how well Eric Berry played against Gronk and absolutely frustrated him the entire game, which was awesome to watch. And it's really unfortunate that Eric Berry went down. I just feel like Malcolm Jenkins is a player that you could use to kind of do some of this similar things. And, I think that, or at least I hope that you would see a lot of that going on Sunday as well. Malcolm really lining up in the slot against Jordan Reed, I think could be one of those matchups to watch. I'll get my prediction out, and then you can come back with that. But I do like the Eagles in this game. I think it's going to be somewhere around 24-17. I think that's kind of where we'll be. I really do like your thought on LeGarrette Blount. I do think they're going to try to run the football in this game, just because that Washington's going to want to pass the ball. So I feel like obviously we know the only way to keep them out of that is by running the football and maintaining time of possession.
Right.
And I think that'd be one of the smart things to do.
Yeah, we talked about earlier how the Eagles need to get off to a good start in the schedule because of what's left in those final 5 games. And why don't we just go down the Eagles' schedule? I know this is your least favorite thing to do, but I do like putting you on record. Why don't we start with the Redskins? We both have them as a win. And then they travel to the Chiefs, which is going to be a tough game, knowing what we just saw against New England. Do you like a win or loss in that game?
Are we going to run down every game?
We're going to run down every game.
All right, well, that's good.
Don't give me that
whole
looks.
Thing. I did it today. That's the one schedule I did look at. But no, I mean, honestly, like, thinking, all off season, I don't like to put records down. I really don't like to do it. But, I really sat down today and I looked over the Eagles schedule, and, I think that, riding high off of that win last night, up in New England, I really do expect the Chiefs to fall off in week 2. I think that the Eagles have a good shot in that game, especially because, they lost Eric Berry, their all-pro safety for the season to a torn Achilles, which is really unfortunate. He's one of the best safeties in the game.
Yeah, he is.
But
especially after everything he went through with his brain cancer and all that.
Yeah, it's a tough story. And then coming back to win comeback player of the year in 2015, I believe it was. When you really look at it, I just think it's one of those times where, the Chiefs are going to be riding high and thinking, hey, we just beat the Super Bowl champions, and really kind of slip up and let the Eagles kind of come in there and get out of there with a win. We'll break more of that down next week, but ultimately, yeah, I like the Eagles in that game.
While I like your thoughts on that, I just feel like the Chiefs know Doug Peterson, they know his tendencies, and you give 10 days to Andy Reid to look at the Eagles and what they do, especially now that they'll have game tape and they'll be able to watch the game live on Sunday. I just feel like the Chiefs will, while it will be a very close game and Alex Smith will not look like Aaron Rodgers or, Joe Montana again, I think it'll be a close game, but it's very tough to win in Arrowhead, so I have that as a loss. I'm 1-1. You're 2-0. We then head to the home opener against the Giants. Win or loss?
I have it as a loss.
I have it as a win, so we're 2-1, and moving on, we then go to the Chargers and travel across the great United States. Win or loss?
I have it as a loss.
I have it as a win. So you have what, 2-2?
2-2.
And I have 3-1. I told you they were going to get off to a good start. The Cardinals then come to town, and I like the Eagles against the Cardinals. I think Carson Palmer not being a mobile quarterback will help the Eagles up front, and I see the Eagles starting off 4-1. How about you?
I have the Eagles as a win against the Cardinals.
All right, you then got 3-2. I'm 4-1. We move on and we go Thursday night against the Panthers in Carolina. For me, that's a stone loss. I don't know why, but I think Cam Newton will be healthy by then, and Christian McCaffrey is just going to run all over this Eagles secondary and outmatch the linebackers.
Fair enough. I have it as a win.
You're 4-2, and I am 4-2 as well. We then move to the Redskins in a little bit of a revenge game. Again, the Eagles haven't beaten them 5 straight times. That doesn't mean they will not win the 6th, but what about the 7th?
I have them sweeping the Redskins this year.
Wow.
I don't like the Redskins at all this year. At all.
For some reason, and this pains me to say, but I just feel like Jay Gruden kind of has our number. I think they'll eke out a win in Philadelphia, so I have them 5-3. I have them 5-3, and you have them 6-2, 5-2. I have them 4-3. We then go to the 49ers and Broncos before the bye. What do you got?
I have a win against the 49ers.
And then what about the Broncos?
Broncos have a loss. So I have them breaking off 4 straight wins and then a loss to the Broncos.
Which would put you at 6-3, correct?
Yes.
All right, and then I also have them 6-3. I think they beat the 49ers, and I think they beat the Broncos as well, because the Broncos that week play Kansas City on a Monday night game and then have to travel home and then travel back to the Eagles and play a 1 o'clock game. I really like them against the Broncos because the Broncos offense, although they do have some offensive power, I just feel like the Eagles will hang with them. We come out of the bye, we have the Cowboys and the Bears. Do you have a split there?
I do, yeah. I have the loss against the Cowboys and the win against the Bears.
I have them 2-0 there because I think they will lose against the Cowboys late, but they usually do better against the Cowboys on the road. So therefore, like I said, I think they get off to a good start, and they're 8-3, but here comes the 5-game stretch where I'm very worried. We have the Seahawks, at the Rams, at the Giants. I have them 1-2.
I have them losing to the Hawks, winning against the Rams, and winning against the Giants. So they would split the season series against the Giants.
And then we have the Raiders and Cowboys to round out the rest of the season. The Raiders come in on Christmas Day Eve. What are your thoughts on that?
I have that as a stone-cold lock loss. Yeah.
Stone cold lock loss.
I just don't like that. I just don't like that offense against the Eagles secondary at all.
All right, so your final record would be?
I have the Eagles at 10-6. And 4-2 in the division.
I also have the Eagles 10-6. They are 3-3 in the division, which puts them in the wild card. However, surprisingly, I think they do fairly well against the NFC West and the the AFC West. And who knows? I mean, everyone can throw out their opinion. We have 16 games in front of us. We'll see how the Eagles do it. But for us, we have them 10-6. We'd like to hear your guys' thoughts as well, certainly throughout the season and everything else. But let's finish up with the jersey numbers 40 through 50. These are the top players in Philly sports history by jersey number, and then we will shut it down, Joe. It's been great having you back, and I'm looking forward to getting to the regular season. We are going to finish with number 41 would be Chris Short, who was a pitcher for the Phillies in the 60s. Don't know much about him other than that. Number 42 was very tough. We went in Jerry Stackhouse.
Some riveting analysis right there.
Yeah. Real breakdown. So number 42, we had Jerry Stackhouse. 43, Randy Wolf. 44, how can you not go with Kimo Timonen? Honorable mention, though, Pete Ratzlaff. 45, Tug McGraw. 46, Herm Edwards. 47, Larry Anderson. Number 48, probably one of my favorite Flyers just because of how small he was. And what a great scorer, Danny Briere. Number 49, good old Jose Mesa.
Oh, my God.
And number 50, Jamie Moyer. How do you like the list?
I need to look up a lot of these jersey numbers.
We'll see if Joe can find anything better. That's going to wrap up episode 51, as he hates on my list of players 1 through 50. If you didn't see number 1 through 25, you can go back.
Having a debate about number 20 one of these weeks. It's going to happen.
It's going to happen during the bye week. You and I are going to go at it because I think. Well, I'm not going to tell you who I think because
we should take this to 100 and then we'll circle the ones we think we should debate.
We will on our 100th episode.
Out of that would be awesome.
All right, guys. Before we lose our minds, because football is right on tap and we can't wait any longer, I'm going to turn it over to Joe. Thank you all for joining us on a Friday night. We will be back next Wednesday, barring any power outage. And I'll turn it over to Joe. I hope you guys enjoy the Eagles game. We'll see you later.
All right, guys, as always, don't forget to head over to mysportingedge.com for all your latest news articles and updates. Follow us on social media on Twitter at SportingEdge1. Share this. That way your friends get it and they can tune in and give us all their thoughts as well. Just because, we weren't, or I'm sorry, just because, you know what? I'll touch on that next week. I'll save it for next week.
Oh, surprises.
Yeah, I'll save it for next week.
All right.
An idea for next week. But yeah, guys, if you ever do miss one of our shows, don't forget you can subscribe on iTunes and on YouTube. Go check out the YouTube page. Please, we need it. And don't forget too, you can always call in or leave us a message. The number's top of the screen, 267-44-MySE. And don't forget to head over to our Sporting Edge website as well to check out all the apparel and get stocked up. All right, guys, take care. We'll see you next week.